G'day, HMR here. Hope you can bear with me with this one. It might be a little bit longer. It's in response to a comment on the video I did, BPD relationships inside BPD idealization. Does he or she love you? So a commenter said that they thought the video was excellent and thanked me for it. Appreciate the kind words. And they wanted to add that they think there's something else going on in this initial idealization phase. And so, is there something else going on in the idealization phase with people with BPD and largely untreated than I've talked about before? I don't know. Let's see what the commenter says. So they think there's more going on in the initial idealization phase. Let me just say clearly, there's only really one idealization phase, and it isn't even what most people think it is. That's what that video is about. I'll maybe try to remember to link it under here in case you haven't seen it, and you might want to. Okay, and even in the first moments of targeting the new partner. So, I want to add that I think there's something else going on in this initial idealization phase and even in the first moments of targeting the new partner. Well, here's the first really not correct, technically, aspect. People with BPD are not targeting partners or people as is suggested that narcissists are always doing. Not all narcissists are even doing that consciously. I'm sure many, many do. People with borderline personality disorder are not narcissists automatically, right? Some may have comorbidity, but not all. And so the idea that they are targeting a new partner, again, I don't get hurt on this much, but I will continue to assert that's not what people with BPD do. And then the commenter continues, because of the lack of self, there are no ideas, interests, hobbies, etc. that can form, at least ones that would be consistent with a particular identity. This is true. Again, not all people with BPD being exactly the same, because some being more high functioning, that just, and in terms of how are they going to get help and how are they going to get diagnosed, recognized, and get therapy, high functioning people with BPD are usually the quiet borderlines, not always, but they also are much more defended than the average person with borderline personality disorder. So they may have ideas. Many higher functioning people with BPD, even untreated, do have careers, and some of them really impressive careers. And unfortunately, maybe a lot of them are mental health professionals as well. So a lot of untreated people with BPD, more high-functioning BPD, might work in the mental health profession, might work in engineering, might be a PhD at a university or a professor, might have a plethora of different careers going on. So you can't really say that it's accurate that all people with BPD, in spite of not knowing themselves well, have this lack of, like, no ideas or interests or hobbies that can form. Because it's not really true that that's the same or to the same degree with all people with BPD. And for the ones that it is really true, if they don't have, without that sense of self, right, they definitely often don't know consistently what they like or don't like, what they value or don't value, what they want or don't want, what their interests are, what their hobbies are. They will, as I've said before, try to seek unconsciously, unbeknownst to them, try to seek identity through other. But that's not, I don't believe in the way that this person is trying to say it's something added into idealization. So the commenter continues, the borderline, okay, first of all, there's not one person with borderline personality. There's no the borderline. They are all very different. And if they're untreated, they're going to have some core patterns for sure, but they're not all the same. So to say the borderline, it's way too general. But the commenter says the borderline ends up with a mishmash of activities. Often yes, always no. Every single person with BPD, no. And has no real goals and accomplishments. Lots of people with BPD struggle with, some have no goals. Some people without BPD have no goals. But to say they have no real accomplishments, that's not true of everybody with BPD either. It's true of a certain percentage, perhaps, lower functioning, and perhaps more severely borderline or having BPD more severely. But again, it's not true that the borderline equals every borderline and they all have no ideas or no accomplishments. Matter of fact, many people with BPD have gone to college or university and maybe taken a plethora of different courses because they couldn't make up their mind which one they wanted, but it doesn't mean they didn't accomplish anything. That's just one arena of example. And the commenter continues, so the borderline is also selecting an identity and an image to, quote, become, unquote, or to hide behind through imitation. That's not really, again, the way they seek identity through other is not conscious, not in their consciousness, not their intention, not anything that they have any awareness of. And what that means, they really aren't selecting an identity. They are trying to seek identity through other, yes, to a degree. But then what kicks in more than anything else, and what's happening in the idealization phase too, is, unconsciously again, untreated people with BPD, this is good, mommy. This is good, daddy. Yeah. And they don't know that. And for codependence, it's a little bit different, but it's also looking for reparation for a wounded inner child in a different way. And the borderline is the borderline that each codependent gets involved with is going to somehow absolutely mirror something that usually isn't discovered until ghosting, discard, relationship rupture, and getting into seeking help. And I'm out here to work with you if I resonate with you, because I'm an expert in this area, and I've been doing this for 32 and a half years, and I help people to heal from these relationships. So back to what the commenter is saying here. So they're not selecting an identity at all. Because one thing about most people with BPD, not all are the same or encumbered to the same degree, but they are so emotionally dysregulated so often, and that floods their ability to think, and like for a time, and until they come back to base mood. But the thing is, they are not, what was my point here? They can't plan, they're not consciously aware, and they're trying to seek identity through you, but it's not like they want your whole identity. They're not really, as a commenter says, selecting an identity. That sounds like that would have to be a conscious process. Oh, I see person A over there, and I really like who they are, and I want that identity. No, it's not like that. And the image. People with BPD to varying degrees can be also kind of image driven, but the majority aren't. Or specifically aren't just image driven. It plays a part in overcompensatory defenses that are maladaptive. But again, I don't think that in the idealization, they are trying to select a certain person to select an identity and to hide behind or through imitation. It's more about people with BPD seeking to get, unconsciously seeking reparation for parental, an injury from a parent at a very young age. And with BPD, it's the intrapsychic narcissistic injury. of arrested development by or before the age of 2, no matter what else they're saying BPD is today, because when they can prove it, give me a call. Wake me up or something. Let me know. Shoot, lost a comment. So then the commenter continues, they will seek to legitimately learn by adopting the new partner's own way of being in the world that has continuity between the image, identity, and the real world person, with particular hobbies, habits, and ways of being in the world that are logically consistent with each other. Well, yeah, but they're, people with codependency, which is most of the people that people with BPD end up in relationships with, if not narcissists, but we'll set that aside for now. People with BPD aren't aware of the missing logic of them not being consistent. So I don't think that they're in any way, again, consciously seeking anything to do with, getting image and identity and continuity through partners and the way they are in the world, their hobbies, habits, ways of being in the world that are logically consistent with each other. Because people with codependency are certainly much more consistent than people with BPD, but they're not wholly congealed, as healthy as possible, consistent or congruent in their own right? Which is another issue in codependency, but not to the same degree as in BPD. And the commenter continues, they are effectively looking for stability with that, but also looking for, quote, cover, unquote, meaning that without adopting that from someone else, they are too easily seen as awkward or misfit. Oh, I totally disagree with this too, because that might be the case for some people with BPD, or the person that is commenter knew the person with BPD that was in their life. But it's you can see. Okay, I'm going to use just numbers out of nowhere here. You could see over the course of days or weeks, let's say, if people with BPD had stickers on their forehead and it said, I have BPD, then looking at, let's say, thousands of them within a few days or over the course of a week, watching them in the world in general, as opposed to in their individual interpersonal relationships and issues behind closed doors at home. Not that they don't have issues when they go out too, but if you were watching them out in the world, so to speak, and not all are the same, right? Then let me see, where was it? Yeah, they're not looking to get cover for otherwise, if they don't have cover of being, the partner and their identity, etc., then they're too easily seen as awkward or misfit with seemingly unrelated interest, worldview, and place in the social stratum. And this is all the commenters saying, this is all part, extra something in that nobody's ever talked about, apparently, or that I didn't say, in the idealization phase. No. And also, so if these people with BPD had stickers on their head, a whole bunch, let's say, an experiment was done, and you go out and you were just walking around and you could see that they had that sticker, okay, they have BPD, you would see a myriad of differences in how they carry themselves in the world and how they go about things in the world versus maybe in interpersonal relationships, like I said. But I don't think you could just pick them all out unless you went by the sticky note and then just decided. You wouldn't be able to pick them all out as obviously, awkward and misfits. I think that's just, I don't even know. No, I just don't think that applies at all. I just don't. and with seemingly unrelated interests. That's not always apparent. You get to know that when you get to know somebody with BPD who maybe doesn't have any interest. Like many of them have, the majority of them don't know, not that they don't have any interest, it's that they don't consistently maintain them over time. They come, they go, they might not be interested in this, that, liking this, that. So yeah, there's a lostness with that, but I don't think it would mean that they are awkward and seen as awkward and misfits. And so this is somehow in the idealization phase, or trying to like fix all this or something. I don't know. I don't agree with that, actually. And then the commenter continues, and that they don't have a place in the social stratum. Not necessarily true at all. Again, there's not one, quote, borderline out there. All people with BPD are not the same. Many have places in the social strata. Many don't. Many people with codependency do. Many don't. Many people without a significant label, so to speak, might have a position in the social stratum and might not even feel like they are worthy of that place. And many other people, for other reasons, don't feel connected to the social stratum. So I just think that's generally not something we can apply to just people with BPD, or really to people with BPD, or to all people with BPD, or that it's part of the idealization phase of what happens really at all in any way that would be discernible or remarkable. And the commenter continues, I think they often prefer to glom onto a new partner who is high-minded, moralistic. No. But at the same time, they hate you for it. Well, maybe this was your experience. I'm not going to say that a person with BPD doesn't like try to glom on in many ways and in the idealization phase, but again, not consciously. But they're not always looking to a new partner who is high-minded. Whatever you mean by high-minded, I'm not sure what you mean. It can mean many different things. Moralistic. And, how would you explain then that a borderline ghosting or discarding someone because of all the splits of evaluation? The final one comes, they discard, and they go on to the next person, and they might have been with a really half-decent, fine person who, let's say, is doing well they have their own business, they're doing well, they have values, they have morals. Maybe let's just say it was a Christian person or a Muslim person or, really faith-based person. And then they go and they get another partner. They go to the next partner. The idealization phase starts all over again. But the next partner could be somebody who's got drug issues and is out in the street selling those. And they're going to fall head over heels in idealization, what that really means, with that person. Because I can't tell you the number of clients that I've worked with over 32 and a half years now, and the clients I'm working with now, that so many have said, not all, but so many have said that if they've been monkey branched, cheated on, and or right after they're ghosted or discarded, that their ex then, which they're not really happy about, they're in a lot of pain and they don't really want them to be their ex yet or at that point, but their then ex goes to another person, male or female, whatever the case is, and the next person they choose doesn't have the same social strata standing, doesn't have the same economic standing, doesn't have the same moralistic or values across the board. So they often move down, some move up and then down. But I don't think that really plays a role in their thinking. It's they're not logical that way. It's not a conscious thing, and I don't even think they're doing that unconsciously. And so the commenter thinks that they often prefer to glom onto a new partner who's high-minded, moralistic, but at the same time, they hate you for it. I would just say generally no. because, like I said, they can move up and down, up and down, up and down, move down, 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 from partner to partner to partner to partner. They keep choosing people that are partners that are like way less together than the last. Let's put it that way, for whatever that might mean. And what they hate you for? A plethora of things. But again, it's really centered around the partner of the untreated borderline as the object other parent representation. So they're not really, though they're trying to seek identity, but not your identity. An identity for them, but not your identity. And also, and this is in the unconscious of people with BPD, untreated, and what they end up hating you for could be 100,000 different things. Because the bottom line is, when you become the the object other parent representation, they will hate you as they hate the parent or parents for whatever happened, whatever didn't happen for them, and what the parent, what the bad parent, the wounding parent was like. So if they, for example, if a bad mother who was really like, say, a borderline mother that was never treated, and then this other borderline now who's 25, 35, 40, however old he or she might be, then they're going to specifically hate what is common in a partner, that with what was something that was injurious about a parent, whether it was a belief, whether it was religion or faith, whether it was none of that, or it was like a focus on money, and maybe the parent was really in a negative and harmful way high-minded, because high-minded is, to me, not a specific descriptor. It could mean so many different things. So I really think that there isn't this, as the commenter put forward, and I say this with all due respect, I really don't think this is all anything extra in the idealization phase of people with BPD, who, let me remind you again, are not targeting people consciously, like maybe many narcissists are, but I don't think all narcissists are. They're not targeting a specific high-mindedness, economic status, social strata, position. They're not targeting anything like that. They're not organized enough. They're not logical enough. And they are really seeking object other parent representation unconsciously. And they're not after your identity either. They're not trying to be you. They're trying to gain something from you unconsciously that helps them to feel like there's something inside. And the other thing that's riding in all of this with BPD, and even in the idealization phase, where the false self is not as active or activated, but will be in that first splitted evaluation, it's the false self that the person with BPD is actually living through. And I could get more into that in another video, perhaps, to explain. And I think I did. Wrote an ebook about that called The Shadows and Echoes of Self, The False Self and Borderline Personality Disorder, which is available at ajmahari.com. So the false self in BPD is huge. And it is a huge reason also why what this commenter is putting forward isn't really something added in extra under, in the idealization phase. And perhaps that video where the commenter left a comment, I'm just trying to find it right now, sorry. But phone is taking its sweet time. Perhaps that, I don't know, I'm not going to find it there. Here, no, maybe not. Sorry. That commenter, the video I did, BPD relationships inside BPD idealization, need to listen to that video, but maybe I need to do like an updated version of that, because I think that the commenters' comment and all that's included here is very interesting. I could see why somebody could think all of that, but it's really just trying to put too much logic where, for the untreated borderline and what they're doing in the idealization phase, it has nothing to do with logic. So anyway, that's my take on, and respectful, I hope, disagreement with what that person commented, saying, because that's just making what the BPD idealization phase is really about underneath what it feels like to those who get with somebody with BPD and it's like all great and everything, the siren song of what isn't really real, but becomes kind of like an unconscious bit of a shared fantasy for a while, until, you know, people usually with codependency realize, wow, what's going on here, because they can't consistently mirror you and try to people please you through their codependency, and when they're idealizing you, they're still not seeing you for you. So there's no big logical intellectual process behind borderline idealization that would mean all of the complexity that this commenter suggests is also, as the commenter said, part of this idealization phase. Because no, it really isn't, I don't believe. Anyway, I hope that might have been interesting, thought-provoking. Let me know what you think below. And if you haven't watched my other video, Inside BPD Idealization, I'll try to link it below, and you might want to check that out. And who knows, maybe I'll have even more to say on this. So, and I don't want to always be self-referential in any way, because I have been healed and recovered, and for so long, it's hard to even remember what happened when I was labeled with BPD, because it wasn't an actual diagnosis or assessment. I was never assessed. Because I just know that, let me know what you think of this, but when I was labeled with BPD, like I said, probably had 4 strong traits, probably not 5, probably not really fitting the diagnosis, but still, 4 strong traits is significant. They just don't diagnose that, and I was never assessed and diagnosed. But in regard to that, I would say, so I didn't have BPD in a severe way at all, but it was still pretty daunting. I never idealized anyone. So I never had an idealization phase, which is just another atypical thing about the fact that I really didn't fall over into the whole diagnosis. But 4 strong traits, you understand that territory when you heal and recover from that. So, but what do you think about that? Because are there other people out there with BPD that don't have it so severely, that might not really idealize? Because I can tell you honestly, I never idealized anybody. And I've been thinking about that recently, because it might just speak to how I never really fit the whole diagnosis more than anything else. But if you think that it speaks to anything else, let me know what you think. And I think it's really important not to try to overthink and overcomplicate what's going on for people with BPD. People, plural, many of them and not all the same, not the borderline, okay? And then what you've experienced with the person with BPD in your life, or who you've been in a relationship with, that there's a lot of core patterns that are similar, right? Or very the same across most with BPD, but not all. So, and then let me just add about my own experience that BPD has been morphing over the years. And so way back in the 70s, when I was having this experience, and into the 80s, through the 80s actually, but I was in therapy, I was in a relationship for 10 of those or 13 of those years. I didn't monkey branch, I didn't cheat on anybody, I didn't ghost anybody, I didn't discard anybody, just so many things that I think a lot of people back then weren't doing with borderline personality. And now, in the last 15 years or so, it's really morphed and changed. What accounts for that? What do you think? Because I've already said in other videos a couple of things I think, but I don't think that's totally what accounts for it. And the internet, though, is a big part. Like I've always said, it's psych meds and social media. Because I recently found somebody with a channel that, like a newer channel, I don't know. They have BPD, but they'll sit there and they'll say, they say, quote, I have BPD. And for example, there was a video that this person did on when I ghost someone and how they feel about it, right? And then that's not really going to be helpful to people, because they said, when I ghost someone, whatever, blah, 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 they were talking about, they didn't come back to say I, they said we. This is what I noticed with a lot of the narcissists online, and the narcissists that tell us they're narcissists, right? Opposed to the ones we can guess about. And people with BPD come along and they talk about it, and some of them seem to be really proud of being BPD and the things that they do. But the other thing is, they always or most often don't say I. Some do, but most don't. And this newer person, or I don't know how long they've been, but I just saw a video of theirs the other day. So when, I'm not sure if they said when I ghosted, they might have said when we ghost. So sort of like this person, many people with BPD want to get up there and tell you, or write in places on the internet, that their experience of BPD, they'll use the word we. We do this because, we do that because, we feel this. We don't like it when you do this. And it's like, so be careful of that, because you're hearing somebody saying something about something they might know about their experience and some awareness they might have, but they're using the term we, so they're trying to explain something to you about all borderlines, which is not possible. Because I wouldn't say, based on what I knew from the inside out or whatever, that I'm speaking for. And even when I'm doing these videos, and have been for a long time, and I've been online for almost 28 years now in general, I've never been saying, oh, people with BPD, like the borderline equals everybody and they're all the same. And then the other thing people have to realize is, people really do heal and recover from borderline personality, because it doesn't require the psychiatry's care. It's not about being cured. It's about healing and recovering from what really is the largest part, for more people than not with BPD, the adverse childhood experience. And learning how to relate through therapy, learning to find yourself and how to relate, knowing the difference between self and other, boundaries, tons of things that people get zero of in their childhoods, in the 87% who are diagnosed with BPD. And then there's the 13 or so percent where it's totally different, but I'm not going to go into that right now. So I think to try to put over logic the idealization phase of people with BPD, as vastly different as a plethora of them are, is to really miss the point about what's really happening for people with untreated borderline personality disorder. It's highly emotional. They are very disorganized usually. They are not targeting. They are not having they have IQs. They can be logic about some things, but not when it involves the emotions of relating to and or getting into a relationship and all that goes on. So trying to over logic it is really just kind of missing the essential core points of BPD idealization.